He may be handsome, but he's definitely the ugly stepchild of Overwatch 2. However, I think I've made some progress in understanding the hero just a little bit better, or at least figuring out how to get more value out of him. I want you to pay close attention here. You see, one of the fundamental things you have to understand about when you're talking about how to play a hero is you have to find out what does the hero bring to the table. And that's something that a lot of people have been struggling with, Lifeweaver, myself included. However, as the numerous buffs have started to roll in and the meta has shifted out a little bit, I think we have a pretty good idea of what the 4 facets are. So number 1 is going to be the pull value. So obviously, when I'm first looking at my situation, the first thing I do is where and when can I get value out of pull. That might be pulling somebody to a better position, but more often than not, it's going to be pulling them to allow them to go aggressive and to keep them alive after they've gone aggressive. And often I'm going to be pulling them whenever somebody goes aggressive on them. And number 2 is going to be survival. Now you have 225 HP, 50 of which is shield, a rejuvenating dash that heals you for 50, and a pedal platform. All of these survival tools can be very useful versus certain heroes, and I think that's the key thing with Lifeweaver survivability. It's phenomenal if the situation is right. A lot of short-range heroes struggle versus Lifeweaver. Heroes without a lot of range, heroes without a lot of vertical mobility or survivability is very good versus. So reading the battlefield and being, can I leverage my survivability versus those heroes? And number 3 is damage. And as it always is the Lifeweaver, every single benefit has an asterisk. His damage is very good in the right circumstances. In close range duels, he's really quite good. At very, very long range duels, he's got very quite good because of the lack of spread. However, it's that in-between highly mobile situation where it can be really, really scary. You can get your head blown off by Hanzo, but if you play outside of Widowmaker's fall off range, you can actually do a lot of work. You're phenomenal at breaking shields if the breaking shield is relevant, but if it's not, then it's not so good. So you have to be really careful about when and where is the raw poke value going to be useful. Number 4 is going to be your raw healing per second, which again comes with an asterisk. Healing per second with Lifeweaver is quite high, but the best way to leverage it is actually to use it on targets that are generally harder to track. Tracers, Genjis, Pharahs, Echoes, anything that moves around a lot, the healing per second is really quite good because it's very forgiving, hard to miss, and also tracks after you've initially released it. So basically, these are what I would describe as Lifeweaver's 4 strengths, and the challenge isn't just to know and understand these, but also to understand which is applicable with the composition you're playing with, which is applicable versus the composition you're playing against, and then which is applicable in any given circumstance depending on the map or the old economy. And that's what makes Lifeweaver so hard. It's not that any of these are particularly hard to do, but it's knowing which one to leverage in each situation. Now, I played 3 hours of Lifeweaver and ranked, and I got to almost Grandmasters and High Masters too. And I felt like I got a lot of games where I was forced to decide upon which of those strengths to leverage after I read the compositions, after I read the situation. And I wanted to pick one of these games in particular to take a look at because I feel like it brought a very nuanced approach to the way of looking at things. So my first read here is I'm looking at my composition. I'm saying, okay, Ryan, Soldier, a lot of heroes that can go aggressive here, maybe looking to pull them. Ana, Ashe, also to a lesser extent Soldier. Maybe heroes that might get dove if they have dive. I need to be prepared for that. And I'm making these reads as soon as I'm walking out from spawn. So that's the number 1 thing you need to do. As you walk from spawn, as the hero selection screen is loading up, you need to be thinking about when and where am I going to be using my pull. Who might need to be pulled in situations being aggressed on or aggressing. And then I look at the enemy comp as soon as I possibly can, okay? Who might be diving one of my guys? Do I need to be playing my life? For example, I look at Brig, I look at Genji, I'm like, hey, my pedal's pretty good versus that, but not so good versus the Doomfist. However, the Doomfist and Genji might be people that will demand a pull onto my Ana, Ashe, or Soldier. In terms of my range, I can poke out the Doom Genji on a Brig, and I can poke out the Widow at extreme ranges, but it's going to be very difficult for me to leverage my damage. The raw healing per second and hard to hit targets, that will be fairly useful on my squishies to help track them behind walls. In terms of my healing per second, I can definitely get value out of that from healing my squishies, but overall it will be more likely than me leveraging my ability to pull people to safety than more than anything else. So I'm going to keep healing. I'm actually going to use the pedal here a little early just to get some scouting information. I see the Doom Genji take top, and this is, I think, where like the Lifeweaver weakness is really a problem, where you're not allowed to really take any sort of proactive action. You kind of have to react with what's given to you, whether that's from your team or the enemy team. Now, there is some level of proactivity allowed with your damage, but this circumstance of the Widowmaker, that again completely ruins things, and I think that's where Lifeweaver struggles a lot. See, I can't even right now, like I couldn't even be peppering in damage right now because the weapon swap takes too long with the charge mechanic. I'm trying desperately not to use pull unless I need it. I pre-pedal here to give me better vision and LOS, and also to be able to pull my Ashe to safety to a higher position. So when she's dove, I'm ready for it. Immediately pull her out. All of those cooldowns they've used are now wasted. And then I need to create more distance. So that's a key thing with a life grip thing. You need to make sure that you're creating distance between yourself and the people that want to go aggressive so that the pull causes more of a value. If I pull this Ashe while I'm next to the Ashe, the pull doesn't really help her very much. But if I create a nice sight line between my targets that I might need to pull, I can pull them to safely. And if it's a good position, I can see multiple targets that I need to pull. That's the big challenge here. I'm still being very cautious about the sightlines that I'm taking with Widowmaker. Again, now my healing per second is really useful. I will not be able to pull this guy, but I might be able to keep him alive through just raw healing. And sure enough, I am. I healing tree just to make sure that we win this trade. Healing tree is one of those tricky ultimates where it's not going to be winning you every single fight, but if the obstruction and the overhealth is valuable, I see a squishy right here, a squishy in the middle of a combat. If this soldier gets overhealth, I think he can kill either Doomfist or Genji, so I'm going to use it. Now I immediately transition to damage. Now I probably should have turned around and checked my angle or checked my flank here to see how my Ana was doing, but I'm gonna, as soon as I can get people in a healthy HP, I'm gonna immediately transition to damage and utilize my poke value. Now again, I'm going into this fight. I know they have Nano Blade. So my value right now is gonna come from, again, not my healing per second, not my damage, but my ability to pull. So I'm thinking I'm gonna walk forward here because my DPS are walking forward, but I'm very attentive to where is that Genji, keeping that Genji on my sightlines as much as I possibly can, ready to pull at a moment's notice. I'm not worried as much about raw pressure. If I see the opportunity to, like I do right now, I'll do a little bit of pressure. Lifeweaver is phenomenal at this, but I'm never compromising my ability to pull my DPS. Immediately, right here. She's crit, there's the ult, immediate pull. Now this is where things get tricky, because if you look at the enemy composition, can I avoid the Reinhardt with my survivability? Yes, but there's really not a lot to bring to the table here. And in addition, my damage is also going to be hard to shoot out because of Soldier Zen, Ana, Hanzo. All of these heroes are going to outpoke me. There's no dive threats. I'm not seeing us run any threats that are going to dive in that I can pull out. My survivability isn't very good. My damage isn't very good. And this is like, I think this is like where Lifeweaver feels the absolute worst. It's actually not necessarily the full dives. It's the situations when we're just in a raw poke mirror and I don't have anything to bring to the table. So this is where you have to be very, very creative. And this is where you have to go outside the four details that I was saying. I had to think, is there any way that I can pocket my squishies, my DPS, in a position where other supports might not be able to? For example, you're going to notice a lot of the next couple of fights, my DPS are going to drop and they're going to take up top. They're going to drop and then take up top. So what I try to do is I try to position to help heal them on high ground while also being able to help my Reinhardt on the low ground as necessary. I sometimes would hold an off angle like this to poke on a shorter sightline to be able to put up more DPS. I would sometimes see my DPS drop and then I pull them back to the high ground and save something that another support would not have been able to do. In addition with that, the ultimate value is on this corner is actually pretty good. But this is where you have to really think outside of the box to be able to find what does my hero actually do here, because what am I going to life grip here? This is all just poke heroes. I'm not going to be able to provide a lot of value through just simply pulling people to safety. That's not what really works here. So you can see here I'm taking a short sightline, focusing on healing my Reinhardt up and keeping my squishies up. And right about this time, I'm thinking, should I be on high ground? Should I be on high ground? Should I be on high ground? Can I even peek safely here? I throw the pedal platform just in case my Zenyatta or Rhino want to take high. But again, my goal here is now just pumping out healings per second because there isn't any other strength that I can really leverage right now. Right there, again, you see the brief window for damage. I see my Rhine land a pen. I'm going to damage. Now, the problem here is because I choose to leverage my damage, I don't get the pull on my Zen, who dies to a flank Ana. Now could I have saved my Zen? Yes, but I chose to leverage my damage strength instead of my pull strength. It was that the right play? I don't know, and this is what makes Lifeweaver very difficult. I pull him out to safety. Now I'm thinking, okay, I need to heal these DPS up on high ground. Very important that I get there. I'm like, oh crap, that's one thing where my survivability was pretty good. Now, if I messed up my tech here. You need to be able to jump at the end of this animation. I would have been able to make this jump here, but I messed it up. But it does make the Ana turn around because she thinks I've survived. So I guess this is where my survivability is actually useful. Now, this is where I can definitely help my Cassidy retake position. So I'm going to pedal myself to high ground and pull him back to high. So that saves him a lot of time and puts him in a better position for next fight. Now, this is where I really choke, because this is one of the circumstances where Life Grip would have actually been useful to have. I messed it up and I used it on the target, and I didn't mean to. I fat fingered it, I used it on the wrong target. Right here, this is where a pull would have been absolutely monstrous. I would have prevented 2 of those ultimates from getting value, put myself in a position where we would have won this fight, and been able to use my tree at the same time. So as you can see, there's a lot of situations, a lot of circumstances where you have to be super creative about where are you going to get value with your pedal, where are you going to get value with your pull, where are you going to get value with your damage and with your healing. I think one of the nice things about Lifeweaver is that through his shortcomings, it's kind of forced me to rethink about how to approach the game as a support, and forced me to really lean into the strengths of what I'm playing. So while the hero still feels really bad in some circumstances, those circumstances also kind of push for creativity and thinking outside of the box. And I do think that if you're creative enough, you can find ways to get value out of the hero. Will the hero be optimal in that circumstance? Absolutely not. But at least you can think of creative ways to get value. Now again, I'm looking at the circumstance right here and I'm thinking Doomfist, Genji, those are heroes I can pull to keep them from feeding when they go into aggressively. Again, I need to be paying very close attention to the status of their cooldowns. If my Genji is deflect, if my Doomfist is power block or one of his cooldowns and I pull them, then I'm the one feeding. So that's the big challenge, is you can't just pull dive heroes when they go in aggressive. You have to know the status of their ultimates, of their cooldowns, just because they might want to continue to go. They might not need your life grip, and by pulling them out, you're actually the one feeding here. In addition to that, I still have a pretty squishy backline, so if their Doomfist, their Kiriko, whatever tends to go aggressive or goes aggressive on one of my squishies, I can also defensively pull. And even from positioning here, like look at the positioning I'm taking here. I'm initially thinking, okay, maybe they're on Doom, maybe they're on Genji. I don't really know what they have just yet. I'm going to assume somebody's going to drop and kill my Zenyatta. So I want to keep some space between myself and my Zenyatta and my Hanzo and be able to pull them out to safety just in case this happens. If I come around here and I peek this corner here, not only will I eat a lot of spam, but in addition to that, I will not be able to safely pull anybody to safety. So I'm going to assume the worst about the enemy composition until I see otherwise, and be able to get good life grip value right from the beginning of the fight. So I've heard my Genji's dash, I've heard my Genji's deflect, and I see crit. And sure enough, 27 HP and dynamited, there's the life grip. And I save his life right there. And that's like, if he had dash or deflect there, then that life grip would have not only been wasted, but it probably would have been a bad decision. It would have actively messed up his value. He doesn't have dash or deflect, I'm able to pull him out. Now that's the most challenging aspect of Lifeweaver, is being able to track that cooldown, track those cooldowns of whatever your heroes are, whether you're playing with a Winston and whether a Primal or Bubble, whether it's a Orisa with Fortify, you must track their cooldowns. This is a common mistake I see a lot of people make. This is a little detail. I know this fight's lost. But I am not going to pull my Zen or Hanzo until the last possible second, which is really hard to react to, obviously, because they could be one shot. But I would rather let them stay a little bit longer to create a little bit more pressure, and see if somebody can waste more of the enemy team's time. Because watch what happens here. The Zenyatta's going to live a little bit longer. I'm going to pre-pedal to create a nice sight lane. Doomfist messes up his punch. They're poking him. He lives there an extra second and a half because I let him. And I pull him at the last possible second. And because I wait to the last possible second, and I also present myself as kind of bait here. I know I'm not going to die to the Asher because I still have my rejuvenating dash. The Ash can't one-tap me. Because of that extra wasted time, look at what this Hanzo does. Gets a kill that otherwise would not have happened. Now this fight is basically lost. However, we have closer respawns. So because I let my Zen greed a little bit and pull him at the last possible second, I let my Zen tank, kind of. I let my Zen create space. And this is especially important for tanks that have more HP. If they feed, don't life grip them right away. Let them feed a little bit first and life grip them at the last possible second. So right here, my Hanzo is going to die, but we're going to benefit from this because by the time he dies, we are now 4 again. My Genji and Doom are back. So I'm thinking, okay, now my life grip value. Okay, what's the value here? Okay, my life grip is definitely a big thing here. My pedal verticality, my survivability. As soon as the Ash is dead, my survivability versus this comp is actually really quite good. It's going to be really hard for them to reach me. So I'm going to pedal myself the high ground here. I'm going to poke out the Doom. You know, coach mechanics here. Just a little bit of poke, right? Just 100 damage to discourage him out. Healing, still trying to track the status of cooldowns. My Zenyatta rushes the rotate. That's okay. Pull him right back to safety. Oh no, I'm being spammed by the Kiriko. That's okay. I have my pedal. I can avoid her spam. Easy peasy. And you can see how like these decisions are happening very rapidly. That's why preparation is so important. Like, you go into these fights, you already should be knowing what you're trying to do. Like, oh, they're probably going to die my Zen. My Zen's going to kind of feed. I need to be able to pull him out. In fact, one of the underrated things about Lifeweaver that I think hopefully people will figure out is you actually want one of either your supports, your DPS, or your tank. You want one of them to feed a little bit. You want one of them to go too aggressively so that you can pull them back, but their attention is wasted time. So in other words, when they focus my Zenyatta, him feeding there allowed the Brig, like that baited the Brig, right? That baited the Brig. That baited the Doomfist or distracted the Ashe even earlier before that. That allowed us to get a kill afterwards. And my life rip pulled him out. So right now I'm thinking, okay, they're on Cass, Junkrat. I do have a little bit of survivability value versus this composition. The Junkrat, Doomfist, Brig, Curie, I can avoid a lot of their damage with my survivability, with my HP. But mostly it's going to be about letting my DPS, my Doom and Genji go aggressively here and then pulling them to safety. As you can see, the healing is pretty good with this hero. Again, I'm able to take a really nice sightline that other supports wouldn't be able to take. And my healing tracks these squishies, so every single time a squishy peaks like this, I'm able to keep them alive. When I see opportunities to, I'm looking to put a little bit of spam pressure on the high ground. I miss a life grip on a Doomfist that's trapped because I'm too busy healing a crit Zen. That's unfortunate. So now I look at the enemy composition. This is again where I'm going, oh, there's definitely going to be pull value here. Like, my Cassidy is probably going to get dove. There's definitely survivability value. That swap to Tracer makes my life a whole lot easier because I know that my pedal platform is going to get a lot more value. My extra HP is going to be a lot more important versus a Tracer than it would versus a Cassidy. So I'm looking for life rip value and I'm looking for pedal value. Obviously, healing on my Genji, maybe spam on the Doomfist is valuable as well, but those are the two main ones here. As you can see again here, I've created some distance between myself and my priority pull target. Like, I'm expecting this Cassidy to be the target of choice. So I want to be able to not only fully pocket him without worrying about dying myself, but I also want to put myself at a distance where the life rip is actually going to get him out of safety. Or get him in safety. And that's going to actually pay off here, because while I'm getting dove, I'm able to pop off Tree of Life. I'm going to pre-pedal here to put myself to safety, and this gives me great vision to not only heal, but obviously able to pull people that are in trouble. As predicted, the Cassidy gets under heat, pull him to safety, in a halfway decent position, and then we're able to win the fight off from there. So all that being said, again, I want to bring your attention to the 4 points here. Where are my life grip targets? Are they going to get aggressed on? Are they going to be aggressing? Where's my survivability value? Am I able to survive extra with the 25 HP, with the shields, with the rejuvenating dash, the verticality of pedal? Is that something that I can leverage versus the enemy composition? How is my damage? Is my damage relevant versus the enemy composition? Do they have a Rhine shield, a Sig shield, a Winston bubble? All of those things are really useful for providing Lifeweaver value. How is my damage pressure versus some of the more immobile targets? Maybe it's a Widowmaker halfway across the map. Maybe it's a Tracer that keeps putting herself in close proximity to you. How is my healing per second? You have a lot of hard to track jumping around mobile DPS, and if you're able to keep distance, you can keep them pocketed almost like a super harmony orb. Is that something you're gonna be able to leverage here? There's a lot of little details that Lifeweaver brings to the table, and the way to improve, the way to climb with this hero is to simply find out which one of those nuances to lean into, depending on your comp, depending on the enemy comp, and depending on the situation, whether it's the ults, the fight, the map, and so on. Let me know if that makes any sense. Hope you found this one helpful, and I'll chat with you guys later.